The first thing I want to speak about is Coach Vusmuzi Vilakazi, coach of Amazulu, co-head coach of Amazulu, has come out after their loss versus the Mamelodi Sundowns, and he's spoken about how South African players lack concentration, especially within the critical phases. If you know anything about coach Vusmuzi Vilakazi, when he was coaching Richards Bay, a lot of what he'd bemoan was the last parts of games where players would not quite be there. And if you're not quite sure what a critical phase is, the critical phases within a game are usually the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game, the 5 to 10 minutes before halftime, the 5 to 10 minutes after halftime, and the 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the game. You could also argue that a critical phase is after you've conceded or after you've scored, those first few minutes after that, because in those times it's very easy to lose concentration. You start a game and you're not quite there. You're still warming into the game, but one goal easy. You think about the Pirates scoring in the first 30 seconds versus the Marawa Gallants in the game that was played last week, right? You think about right before halftime. You've had a big half, or you've had a good half, or you've had a tough half, and you're just thinking at the last 5 to 10 minutes that I just need to get to halftime. Your head is in the change room and you get hit. Similar situation as with when you come back from the halftime break, and similar situation towards the end of the game. Now after scoring also, there's that thing, Yoguti, you guys are still happy, you're still high, you may still be in the feelings of scoring, and then somebody scores, or if you've conceded, sometimes they tend to cascade and you concede one and then now you've conceded two more on top because you're still dazed, confused about what happened. Those are critical phases. And while I hear him, because that is a very important thing, this is a chance for us to have a bigger conversation about South African players in general. And I want to have this conversation from two lenses. There was an interview on idiskitv where Umunyane was speaking about bafana playing France, the 5-0 match where France beat us 5-0. And I want to speak to players taking things serious. In that interview, he goes on to say that, they played against France, and one of the things that shocked him was how direct the players were, but how the movements of the players, it seemed like, they were dictated by something else. They were so zoned in, they were tactical. So he'd say that Mbappe comes into my zone. When I follow Mbappe makes a run purposefully here. I follow Mbappe, in comes Griezmann takes the spot. Now, I've left my space because I'm chasing this one, and you can tell it's a plan. When you go back to him, he leaves, and then Mbappe is now the main guy again. And he spoke about a lot of the technical parts and the tactical parts of the game where, you are doing things for a purpose. I've often said on the show, that our players, if you were to pause a game in the middle of the game, and you were to pause it and you looked at everybody and you asked everyone to just stand exactly where they are, and you asked them, why did you make that move? Why did you go there? Why are you running there? Where's your next pass going to be? Why would you make that pass? You who's making a run, why are you running into that space? If you were to ask them to break down what they do, you would probably find that a lot of the game is a thoughtless thing where they're just playing. A lot of the game is them making up things on the fly. And maybe the difference between our players, even in Africa, and in comparison to the world, is that those guys understand why and how and when I am doing this, why I'm moving like this, why I'm making this run, why I'm looking that way, why. They understand those little things. And Tina, we leave the players to be the ones to come up with everything. I hear this conversation, we speak about quality players all the time. And I believe that our problem is we genuinely believe in our heads that all of these players are always mindful in the game, hyper football intelligence wise, can be trusted to make decisions. And the truth is that a lot of players in the world, I don't want to make it about a PSL thing. A lot of the players in the world are not as good as we think they are. And there's a lot of heavy lifting that's done by coaching. I'll get into coaching in the second part of this podcast. But I think our players need to start taking those things seriously.
Sorry to interrupt the video that I'm sure you're enjoying, but I just wanted to say thank you for all of the support that you guys have shown me and my Overthinking Football platform. I'm a one-man band that's doing all of this, and I really do enjoy the comments about how, you know, Supersport needs to come fetch me and SABC and all of that stuff. And I think it speaks to the quality of the content, but also the amount of effort that I put in. So I just wanted to say thank you. But the truth is that Abu Supersport and all of those guys, yes, we're competing with them, but it's a completely different place. The sponsors are looking for former players, and to be honest with you, running some of these things is getting so difficult, and things have changed at home. So financially, it's a whole different world. So I wanted to try something new and come to the overthinkers, the people who watch the content, and say it would be incredible if you guys could contribute monthly towards the platform, towards keeping my lights on, but also making sure that all of the crazy things that I want to do, that I want to take Supersport on with, I can actually do. And just for 20 Rand every month, I think that would be an incredible contribution if you can make it. It may sound like a little, but if we can get a lot of people behind it, then we'll be able to carry on doing what I do. I'll be able to carry on giving you the content and also expanding it, because we don't have shows like this, and us content creators need help from our audiences. So I just came here to ask you if you can. Here is the account number that you guys can use in order to contribute. And I think, yeah, I'd be very grateful if you would. But anyway, let's get back to the video. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
I used to read about Sokala Tuma and all those things, and you'd watch the players you'd read about the players in the interviews, and they'd tell you about my favorite player is Messi, my favorite player is Ronaldo, my favorite player is Xavi. Why is he your favorite player? Oh, it's the way that he thinks, is the way he does. Meanwhile, you are also a professional. You are also a professional who's supposed to be thinking about this. You know, I'd be pressed to find out. I really want to find out how many players do their own post-match analysis of the mistakes that they made or the good things that they did. I wonder if they do those things in depth by themselves. You know, I often point to the NFL and the NBA, and I speak about some of those players. Again, 90% of those leagues also have they're not special players. There's a couple of special players, but anyway, when you read about those guys, they've got out-of-season coaches. So in the off season, they come out and they've got their coaches that they've brought in a guy who's a specialist in shooting and movement as a shooter in the NBA. And I do drills and I learn and I change my shot and I do this and I do that. How many of our players have those type of things? Where maybe you call Coach Benny and you say, Coach Benny, I need to improve my striking. Can I work with you in the off season? Some of them go even to the point, those players overseas, some of them go even to the point where those coaches that they've hired and they pay are part of their actual practices. So umuntu chimane team, when they're done chimane team, bangena nalo their own coaches. You think about a Steph Curry, he's got 2 of his own coaches that he does shooting drills with, that teach him, okay, how do you shoot when this guy is here? Do we have those type of things over and above the development was meant to be made? I had a conversation about that previously, but do our players take it seriously enough to understand the game to that level, even on their own? To know that, guys, we are entering a critical phase. How many of our players know what time it is during games? In the games where there's no scoreboards, you think about an old Peter Mokaba stadium that maybe, I'm not sure, but I don't believe they have a scoreboard with the time. How many understand, okay, now we're moving into here, Gunzim, Kshubile, maybe now we need to defend a little bit like this. Talking on the pitch, do they talk, do they do? There's so many questions that I have about the players, and I think it plays out in the lack of concentration. It plays out in losing games in critical phases. It plays out in decision making in the box when we get there, when we play. And maybe we give our players a little bit too much credit in terms of thinking that they are as good. But then when they get to play against the really good teams around the world, or the really good players, and you can have a conversation like Umunyan, and it's not to say he's a bad player. I don't want to say he's a bad player. I don't want to say any of that stuff. But a professional who's been playing football for a while, top level. At the time, I believe he was a Pirates player, top level. It's Orlando Pirates. Facilities, resources, all of those things are down. To have that player come out and say, I went out versus Abombape, and they just blew my mind with their movement. They just blew my mind with their thinking. They just blew my mind. It kind of scares me. And you see it sometimes play out when they meet the big teams. When Bafana plays a really big team, you're like, oh, yeah, we see the difference. And I don't think it's that much of a quality difference. I think it's that much of a study difference. How much time are you giving yourself to get better? Are you doing the extra work? Are you studying? Are you taking this thing seriously? But it leads me to the second part of the conversation. And this comes from an interview that I had with the Coach Kanu. I'll put the links up here somewhere. I had an interview with the Coach Kanu. And Coach Kanu was speaking about how he was coaching Richards Bay at the time. They were obviously in a relegation battle. And he said sometimes he wonders if the players are aware situationally that the club situation overall is you guys are in the relegation zone. And maybe now you can't go out and party the day after. You can't go out and have poor practices. You can't go out and play half and half when you're going to go play these games that are coming in. You have to be locked in and try save your jobs. He was lamenting the fact that some of these players may not even care that they're in a relegation fight. And this is the second awareness I want to speak about, because I think this is the one that follows our league. I've often said that Mamelodi Sundowns is the most focused team. They don't take games for granted. They don't take days for granted, trainings for granted. They don't take anything for granted. They've created an environment where if you're a player and you sleep, someone will replace you. And we're going to buy somebody that's better than you. So already competitively, the players have to be here. We've heard about the bonus schemes, where a lot of your money that comes in, or the extra cream money, is bonuses. So you have to go out and win games and win trophies. That's how you become a supremely rich player, or you become those things, because you're winning the trophies, the bonuses add up, and then chigi, your salary is very high. Mentality already there. They've created an environment that is a high performance environment, that is highly competitive, that Sundowns wants to do big things. And you see it in the everyday. You see it in the everyday. And most teams don't have environments that are like that. And you start seeing it play out. The fact that Mamelodi Sundowns has opened the gap over and over and over again, bigger and bigger and bigger, season upon season upon season. They've been opening and widening the gap in the league. Widening the gap between them and the other South African teams on the African continent, and how we think about it. Situational awareness to know that, guys, we're fighting relegation. We need 8 points from the next 12 in order to save this thing. We need to play out of our skins. You watch how comfortable some of the players are playing. I'm going to point to Richards Bay. You watch how comfortable some of those players are, knowing that last season they finished the season at number 15. But now they're heading into another season where they're at number 15, and you don't see an urgency. You don't see a want to go fight. You watch teams that have been number 15, 14, and you're like, guys, you've been hovering above the relegation zone for the past X amount of months. When are you guys going to wake up and say, yo, guys, oh, not months, years, X amount of years? At what point do you wake up and say, but guys, we cannot be here. We need to move out of this zone? Do our players take the club situation seriously? Guys, we are in number 9. We're trying to get to top 8. We're in number 4. We're trying to get to number 3. Or number 5, you're trying to get to number 4 or number 3 so that you can play confed football. You're trying to get to number 2, number 1 so that you can try and play. If you look at the Stellenbosch last season, everything was in their favor to play Champions League. That would have changed a lot for Stellenbosch. Or at least somewhat in the way that they run the model of the team. They couldn't finish it off at the end of the day. Pirates came back to sneak in. How do we make sure that our players understand what's at stake? Understand what's really crazy is, especially with the relegation, guys, relegation changes everything. Look at Cape Town Spurs. Your coach got fired. You weren't winning. I think it was one of the worst records we've seen in the PSL. Now they're struggling in the NFT. It's not as easy to bounce back up. And had some of those players taken it as seriously during that time, given a little bit more of a performance during that time, maybe that team is not there. So I think something we need to talk about in football is in-game concentration, in-game awareness, number one. And then number two, we need to speak about club context. But the players aren't the only people here that you could point at. Guys, I've been nominated at the TikTok Awards Sub-Saharan Africa in the Sports Creator of the Year category. Not bad for a guy who does all of his work from my dining room behind the couch. What also makes this cool is that I primarily cover the PSL. So to everybody who said local football won't get you anywhere, this is where we are now. But these awards need votes to be won. So I need you to go to the link in my profile. Don't worry, it's going to be anywhere you're watching this. If you go to the profile, you will find this link. Click on the Sports Creator of the Year, and then click on the Vote Now button next to my picture. That's how you cast a vote. You can vote for me once every single day up until this date and time, the 31st of December at 1 minute to 12. Remember, this is the Sub-Saharan Africa Awards, so it's a chance for me to put a star on my logo, man. Because, well, hi. So my overthinkers, please ask everybody to vote. Ugogo nomkhulu, everyone who you can, because this is a chance for us to really state that South African football is something really important and can be taken seriously. Help me out.